in Hassanabad. And that is all for the moment. Thank you for watching PTV World News.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host SM Hali, presenting another edition of Defense and Diplomacy. Today we are going to talk about the US endorsement of the Indian cold start doctrine and also their concerns about Pakistan's tactical nuclear weapon. We will briefly touch upon Ashton Carter's visit to India and the few documents that he has signed with them, and of course the implications of the Indians demanding the Predator drones from the USA. But first things first, let me get to my very honored guest. We have with us Major General Khalid Naeem, a very renowned defense analyst. Welcome to the show, sir. And we have with us Tariq Pirzada, who keeps his very close eye on the pulse of the situation. Let's start the discussion with you, General. What do you think of this endorsement, if we can call it that, by President Obama, because he's shown his concern about the strategic doctrines of India as well as Pakistan?
They have in my personal reckoning, they have a very significant tilt towards India vis-a-vis Pakistan. Okay. And you would see that never have they criticized or sided with Pakistan against India. So not only what you're saying is true, but it also reflects the American mindset. Even though Pakistan is strategically very important for Americans, there is no doubting that fact. But what has been bothering them is, one, the Pakistan-China economic corridor and the Chinese control of Gwadar Airport. Because, yes, the seaport. And because that is going to hurt them badly in view of their relationship and approach with the Gulf states and with Iran. They were eyeing control of Gwadar port for a long time, but eventually it fell into the lap of Chinese, because Chinese have been very sincere with you. Now, as far as Mr. Carter's...
But allow me, sir, before you move on from this. Aren't the Americans being paranoid because the Chinese have no intention of showing any hostility towards anyone or using Gwadar for any strategic purposes? It's purely a commercial port and it will be used for commercial reasons.
Well, yes and no. They are paranoid to an extent, but they are not entirely paranoid, because today China has a different strategy. And strategies change according to the interests of the countries, nations. So, yes, trade is the important aspect, but it could expand into other fields and other manifestations, which the American think tanks, when they run their minds, they feel it could be a potential danger to the American interests in the years to come.
So
Not now.
Are you implying that the American think tanks consider threat potential based upon the assets rather than the intention?
No, that's true. That is true.
Okay.
And the other thing I was reading today, they have also extended cooperation in the naval field, surveillance of the Indian Ocean, of the China Sea, and their Indian Navy and American Navy are going to cooperate with each other very closely. Now, this is also something that should cause concern to Pakistan. And as far as their criticism, unfortunately, our Prime Minister couldn't go. And we were being represented by our
Tariq Fatmi.
Mr. Tariq Fatmi. Now, Mr. Tariq Fatmi is, I feel, far removed from the realities on ground. He has his own mindset, but he is definitely not the foreign minister material. And he was definitely not a good choice for replacement of the prime minister who couldn't go. Now, this was another setback. Why he couldn't go? Of course, the reason was those people who got killed, and he thought this was not the appropriate time for me to go there. So he didn't. But our case was weak. It wasn't fought the manner it should have been fought, and that is why the US president also criticized Pakistan more than it criticized India. The Gold Star doctrine that India was advocating very strongly, and if I may jump the gun, our tactical nuclear weapons, our battlefield weapons, nuclear tipped, are primarily meant to counter the Cold Start doctrine, whereby Indian forces, without declaring war, would walk into Pakistan, take a big chunk of territory, and stay tight over there. So,
kind of Guderian's Blitzkrieg movement.
Yes, Blitzkrieg. So you had to have some counter for that. And tactical nuclear weapons are a great deterrence, because one small weapon can probably obliterate an entire armored division. So this is what kept them back. Otherwise, they were ready with this Cold Start.
Exactly, and that is why they are screaming so much. If you allow me to bring Advocate Tariq Pirzada into the loop, what is your opinion about this talk on the Indian Cold Start doctrine? Because in a way, it vindicates Pakistan's position, because we have been crying horse over it.
Actually, Americans' dishonesty, let me use a very blunt word.
That's rather undiplomatic on their program title, Defense and Diplomacy.
The Americas, the policy, policy-based dishonesty towards Pakistan has become so obvious that even a child can notice what the US policy means in relation to Pakistan and India when the two countries are discussed by the US president. This is a shame. Look, just a few days prior to this nuclear conference, India conducted a sub-launched ballistic missile for the first time from its own indigenous, so-called indigenous nuclear submarine. And actually the State Department, maybe President Obama didn't know that, but I don't think there is a very close coordination in the US administration, so it's never the case that nobody knows. He knew what India has done. The White House remained quiet. This department, which is the State Department, it came up with the statement. The countries in the region should restrain themselves from engaging in nuclear race and something like that. Well, there is no race. Pakistan is not a naval nuclear power at the present time. So the country that has really done damage to the world peace through through nuclearizing the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, that is the point of concern. But the US president simply said, the two countries should know where they are headed in the nuclear race. That was so disingenuous, so dishonest, so insincere in terms of being honest as a superpower or a power broker. But because they're not they're a strategic partner. Remember, the key word is, people tend to forget that the United States is a strategic partner of India. And today's and yesterday's principle agreement, the agreement in principle between Ash Carter and the Indian Defense Secretary on the use of all three facilities.
So, if you allow
I
me,
just want to name them.
I just want to name them. I want to discuss it. I want to discuss it a little while later because I'm not through with this aspect.
No.
Name them. Okay, go ahead. Name them.
So the two sides have agreed in principle, and the agreement will be signed in the next few weeks, that the United States and India would be using each other's bases, military facilities, air bases, all three of them, for military purposes. It has been said so nakedly and so clearly, and I'm glad there is some honesty in relation to India.
No, but they haven't reached any conclusion, not during Mr. Carter's.
I didn't say that. I'm saying they have reached an agreement in principle. The actual draft will be signed in the next 2-3 weeks.
But coming back to cold starts, and since you are the military expert here, there's a caveat in it, and India has been claiming a no first use of nuclear weapons policy. But in the cold start, it says very clearly in its own preamble that even if there is a threat of the use of nuclear weapons, India is going to retaliate. And this threat obviously is now possibly to counter the so-called potential threat they feel from our development of the tactical nuclear weapons. So what is your thought there, sir?
First of all, I think both countries have second strike capability. And even if India, although this is their declared policy, they won't, but they still suspect Pakistan might, and Pakistan will, in case they cross that threshold in the context of cold start, the whole idea of a cold start war. So since they fear that, but we know that they also have a second strike capability, and we have probably third strike capability. Our nuclear assets are so well spread and so secure that India cannot take them out. Not even America, I dare say, can take them out. And Pirzada was mentioning about India launching a missile, submarine-based missile. Pakistan has had that capability since long. So
we're talking about Babar.
Yes, and I'm also talking about submarines.
I'm talking about the submarine-launched Babar cruise missile.
Babar cruise missile, yes. So Pakistan has had that capability. And the next question that comes to my mind is, does America not have tactical nuclear weapons?
Oh, it does.
Does India not have tactical nuclear weapons? What about England? What about France, Russia? They all have these battlefield nuclear weapons because they know a time will come when they would be constrained to use them in order to gain advantage. So who are they? Why are they becoming the preacher? And why are they sermonizing Pakistan not to do it? Why not they tell India the same thing? I mean, if it is on an even keel, then one would be convinced that they are sincere. But it's not. Their tilt is very obviously towards India.
Point taken. But you see, the general mentioned about Indian tactical nuclear weapons. Prahar, 150 kilometers. Pragati, 70 kilometers.
Yeah.
Both are tactical nuclear weapons.
Absolutely.
But all the hullabaloo is about Nasr, which Pakistan has developed.
Well, the reason is, as I said very clearly, that the United States is a strategic partner of India. So the tilt, the word tilt is not actually the right word in my judgment, and not to disagree with, I'm not disagreeing with him. It's not an issue of tilting towards India. It's a clear, noticeable, on the paper, recorded, drafted relationship signed many, many years ago that we are strategic partners in every single sense of the word and in every single conceivable area that the word strategic partnership covers. So that's very important, from defense to space to conventional weapons to nuclear weapons. In everything, they are even prepared to provide them the aircraft carriers construction technology. And already the aircraft engines, so let me not go into the detail. They are strategic partners. We are not. So the United States is increasingly becoming a threat, and this agreement that will be signed, very dangerous agreement with India that will be signed in the next couple of weeks, because the draft is being worked out.
But this has been work in progress for the last whole decade, sir.
Yeah,
10 years.
But now it is reaching a culminating point. And it is reaching a culminating point, not that I'm diverting the issue, when the CPEC is about to be operational. So you see the political and military pressures that Pakistan will be subjected as soon as there'll be the trade corridor becoming functional, in the next year or so.
In fact, there's more to it than meets the eye. I'll just get back to you. But General, I want to draw your attention to what Advocate Tariq Pirzada mentioned earlier about this military logistics sharing agreement, which is likely to be culminated between India and
yes,
and the USA. Last night, I was on a program with Voice of America, and on the other side of the fence was an Indian analyst, and I was pleasantly surprised to hear from him very serious concerns. He was saying that India is getting into a pitfall, because when the US is going to demand sharing or using the Indian air bases, naval bases, and the military bases, there is going to be no end to it, and India is signing off its sovereignty. So what are your thoughts on this?
First of all, there are many reasons why Pakistan stands on a weak wicket vis-a-vis American policy towards these two countries. First is Talibanization. Second is terrorism. And it is also a fact that terrorist networks initially, if not now, were operating from Pakistan. And it was a result of our past policies, starting from, I don't know, leaving Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, but starting from Ziaul Haq to this day. We've been fluctuating. Our foreign policy has not been steadfast. It has not had a vision. It is not forward-looking to this day. And Indian foreign policy, with a heavy heart, let me admit, they are very aggressive, and their foreign policy is based on solid facts.
And it's very focused.
Very focused. And they realize their importance in the affairs of the world this day. There was a time when they were a very close ally of the then USSR. Now that is not the case. The whole thing is reversed. And now they are a very close ally of America. And let me also tell you, it's not just America demanding the use of their bases, various bases, naval or...
Although it's supposed to be reciprocal, India can also make use of American bases.
Yes, but India doesn't have the wherewithal to go all the way to the United States and use their bases. But they have offered India F-16s, they have offered India F-18s, they have offered India...
the F-35 fifth generation fighter.
That I don't know. That I don't know.
It's on the wish list.
And bigger aircraft carriers that can go farther away, better submarines. Now all this is being offered to India. Indian lobby, we all know, it's a statement of fact, is very strong in India, in America.
USA, huh?
And since they are potentially, and they still are, the largest buyer of the military equipment in the world, they are the largest. And the defense industry in America has a very strong hold on Congress and on the American, by extension, on the American government.
The military industrial complex.
Yes, and they shape their policy as well, because it is a matter of money. Money is what makes the mayor go, and it's very dear to the hearts of the Americans. So they are pressing the Americans to offer all these to India. Americans probably think it is in their interest. It's a counterpoise towards against China, and this is their side interest. And also counterpoise towards Iran, even though the relations between Iran and the rest of the world have marginally improved. But Iran still sticks to its stand that we have the right to self-defense, and we shall be making missiles, and nobody can stop us from that. Now, when you consider all these things, please search your heart and admit that we have been making gross mistakes. We have lost the sympathy of the world. There, 100 people die in Pakistan. There is not a single voice from any of the country, including Islamic countries, condemning that
heinous act of terrorism.
Heinous act. So this is where stand, and this is where Indians took advantage of our weak and fluctuating
Foreign
policy.
Point taken, sir. Now, coming back to the original point you were making about the CPEC, the point which the general also said and you also endorsed exactly was that the American interest is in India is not just its market, but it also wants to counterbalance China. But this is on one hand. On the other aspect, it is also trying to ensure that Japan stands in the way of China, especially in the South China Sea. Yesterday's G7 foreign ministers meeting at in Hiroshima, among other things, the aspects which were discussed were the South China Sea as well as nuclear proliferation.
Right.
So the dotted lines are getting connected here.
Actually, they are connected from the Sea of Japan to the Arabian Sea. And let me put it very clearly, to the Gwadar. If you read the statement in detail of Ash Carter's,
Ashton Carter.
Well, we briefly they say Ash Carter in the United States. I'm sorry.
I didn't know you're on first name basis with him.
Well, it's not the first. Anyhow, so let's stay focused on the issue. The issue is, if you read it thoroughly, it says very clearly that all three different military facilities of India will be used by the United States and reciprocally by India, which is less likely. But the purpose is to contain China in the South China Sea and seek India's support in that regard. But forget that side of the equation. The Chinese are quite capable of handling that situation over here. But just travel by sea 500 kilometers to Gwadar, or 600 kilometers or 800 kilometers, depends on how far
which port you are traveling
which port you are talking about, because the other ports will be coming up very shortly in the days to come. So the reality is that the presence of US forces on Indian bases, their ability to freely use them for military purposes, that's the Ash Carter's crux of the statement. This agreement that will be signed, which has been reached in principle, I keep repeating it, will be allowing United States to use the Indian bases, all three kinds, for military purposes. I'm not making it up. This is their language of the statement that they have issued. It's in today's paper right here in front of me. So what I'm trying to say is that the threat is South China Sea, leave that area. Before Gwadar becomes an operational port, the threat has already started emerging. So if, for example, something goes wrong in the area, the Americans won't have to fly too far. It will be coming
But
from a few hundred
allow me to
kilometers.
ask you a question in this.
And they said it very clearly. The Chinese influence, military influence in the region, and they see Gwadar as a part of that. You said that in your intro very clearly. So all I'm trying to say is that Pakistan has to work on two fronts. Navy is the most neglected branch of Pakistani forces. Yes, we have heard about 8 submarines that will be acquired, but it is still far away in future. I'm not going into that. We have to allocate a special procurement budget, and I keep saying that in program after program, of at least $3 billion. And a lot of people say, where would the money come from? And I keep answering, it will be coming from where the other loans are coming from. 30, we have taken a...
No, sir, from Panama.
No. I'm not going there. Let me say, we have borrowed 4,700 billion rupees, that is $47 billion in 3 years. I think $3 billion each year out of this sum would have been a good contribution towards strengthening both Gwadar and the naval forces, the armed forces, the army and the air force. We got to go that route.
Okay.
If you don't, we will keep having these programs, and Indian influence in the region through the United States will continue to grow menacingly.
Sir, point very eloquently put. But one aspect I need to solicit your opinion on is, while we are talking about the military logistics sharing agreement or whatever understanding between the US and the Indian armed forces, not that I grudge the Indians, but don't you see that the Indians are going down a rabbit hole by signing this?
Well, a lot of people come up with this point, and if I were an Indian, I would say, yes, Indian sovereignty will be compromised, but I can care less about India's sovereignty. I can care about Pakistan's sovereignties and the threat that are likely to be posed to it.
As I said, I don't grudge.
I know that's my issue is, for example, a lot of people say, for example, Nasser Janjua said yesterday, and I have to say that,
the National Security
Advisor, that both Pakistan and India have to invest in peace. That's a pipe dream. India is an enemy state. If somebody doesn't understand that, well, let there be 1,000 years after that, we will be friends. Until then...
No wonder we have called off the peace talks, because terror and talks don't go together.
Yeah,
allow me to get to the general.
Sure.
Sir, you gave a list of a number of wish items the Indians are asking from the Americans, and some of which the Americans are dangling like lollipops. We are going to get 8 F-16s from the USA to continue our war against terror, and 8 F-16s is a drop in the ocean. But on the other hand, the Indians are asking them for Predator drones.
40 of them.
And even one is dangerous enough.
And 100 F-16s.
100 F-16s. They have already signed for 126 Raphaels from France. And as I mentioned, not to belittling the thing, the F-35 fifth generation fighter aircraft. So this is a fantastic wish list. But I think the balance in the region is really going to be disturbed, not by Pakistan with just measly 8 F-16s, but these 40 Predators and the 100 F-16s and the 126 Raphaels and whatnot. So what are your thoughts there, sir?
My thoughts are that so long as you are keeping minimum nuclear deterrence, India dare not attack you. They can accumulate as many number of lethal weapons as they wish to, but I don't see a conventional war without ending into a nuclear war, because when your threshold is crossed, what good are those tactical or strategic nuclear weapons? You put them in a showcase and just tell the world that we are a nuclear power. You will use them, and then it will become a mutually assured destruction. Indians are not such bloody fools not to realize that it will go into a fiasco ultimately at the end of the day. Now, these weapons, I suppose American interest also is to contain China and to neutralize China again in a conventional war. But China has also gone way ahead from what it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, militarily. Its navy, when it hardly had any navy, but it now has a strong navy, which perhaps still could not compare with the Indian Navy, but it has a strong navy. So with all these weapons, even if they are given to India, I rule out the chances of India attacking Pakistan. Their cold start theory has already been blown to pieces.
In fact, they are, to borrow a term, cold start is leading to hot waters.
Hot waters. Now, trade is another very important factor, which I think we tend to underplay or underestimate. They want, whether it is South China Sea or whether it is Japanese Sea or Indian Ocean, or then leading into Arab Ocean and the Gulf states. This is a trade route. China also has a lot of interests in CPAC. Why? Because they are far too away from the rest of the world, and they have to make a very long detour, which makes it extremely expensive for them to enter into trade with all these countries. But Gwadar gives them, one, a very strategic position because it sits at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, and two, that through it they can influence the world through their trade, like they have influenced us. You see, every second item is a Chinese item in Pakistan. You see some of the African countries, China is investing so much in those African countries, and it has a very large expanse of trade with those countries. So China right now, it is bent upon strengthening its economy. I had said it way back in 1994 when I had visited China. We stayed there for 15 days, and I could then see what they were up to and what they will be 10 years hence or 15 years hence. And not that I am a what you call voyant.
Clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant. That's a French word. But I think and I had written it. I was then doing a war course in the NDU. And I wrote in my remarks that China is going to be the next power in the world, economic power #1. And perhaps it might even surpass America. So we should cultivate our relationship, and we still had very good relationship. And Pakistani delegations going there, they get VVIP treatment. So did we. I was a brigadier then, and I had some lieutenant colonels with me. So it was more like a study tour. They took us to many places, and I could see the extent of the progress and their commitment towards becoming an economic power of international stature. So, which has come true. Now it is further not only consolidating its trade via the Gwadar, which will happen. I mean, it's always a two-way traffic. China hasn't given you $46 billion for nothing, even though it's a loan on a very low interest rate. But a loan has to be repaid. It may be repaid over 50 years or 100 years, but they have their own interests. They can also influence Afghanistan. They can influence the Central Asian countries, and they can influence Iran, and they can block the Persian Gulf anytime that they wish to. And please note my words that Gwadar will not just be a trade center point. Chinese Navy will always also be stationed over there. But he has said, I agree with him, that our Navy is probably the least, the most neglected. And even now, but now gradually it is dawning upon us that we have to have a very strong Navy, and efforts are afoot in that direction. Now Navy has ordered 8 new submarines, and they have a lot of other capabilities also. They have nuclear capabilities also.
There are certain things we don't need to talk about on this program, but I fully endorse your views, sir. If you allow me to get back to the advocate, you see, giving the devil his due, or to use a less diplomatic term, you see, it was mentioned, the US Secretary of Defense was asked about its relationship with Pakistan.
Yeah.
To which he responded that the Indians also have a relationship with Russia, which the Americans don't grudge. So they should not look at these relationships as a zero-sum game. You have any
Could
opinion
I elaborate on that?
Please.
Well, there was a statement issued by Ash Carter, probably somewhere else prior to coming to India, just a few days ago, 4 or 5 days ago. And he actually elaborated that relationship between India and United States and between Pakistan and United States. He said, we have a complete global agenda with India, on all major issues around the world. But with Pakistan, there are 2 issues that we are interacting on. A, terrorism, and B, there was another aspect that slipped out of my mind, but that was not really important. The crux of his point was Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. If Afghanistan and terrorism are for us, and the rest is for them in terms of expanding India's influence in the region and around the world, that elaborates US policy. People just don't understand in the country that what United States is up to and what India is up to. Let me say one thing in terms of Navy. There are a lot of things in the program, doesn't have a lot of time.
But you have been a strong advocate for the Navy in all my programs.
No, but here is one thing. You see, we are talking about things that will be shipped to India in future. What has been shipped is, among other things, is a fleet of 8 P-81 Poseidon maritime surveillance aircrafts. Yes. And among other capabilities, and I would not discuss them, there's no point, because it's probably people who have interest, they know it. These Poseidon aircrafts are data linked with the Indian navies at the present time. Data linked. That means if they are 200 kilometers from Pakistani waters, or 100 kilometers or 50, and those maritime surveillance aircrafts are able to convey data, because they can cover hundreds of kilometers, that goes without saying. So that capability is enough to simply finish us off at this moment. These are 3 submarines that we are counting on. I am not angry. This is a reality on the ground. So we have to rush, waiting for something to be achieved or procured 10 years from now is not in. So you have to take something off the shelf and something that you have to wait for the future programs to be matured. So my point is, at the present time, while these threats are looming, I agree with General Rahil Sharif at the present time that we have to protect Gwadar and the CPEC. But the problem is, part of the CPEC is land, part of the CPEC is maritime, but part of that is highly mountainous region where we need massive aviation capability, particularly heli-borne capabilities. We have limited capabilities at the present time.
Okay.
We got to invest over there, not invest in peace, but invest in war so we can have peace.
Point well made. So that was a very passionate appeal.
No, it was not a passion. No, it's a rational appeal.
It is rational but full of passion. No, I appreciate it. It shows that you are a bona fide citizen of Pakistan and you love this country, which we should all.
But we are talking about strategic issues at the present time.
Absolutely. But General, before I conclude the show, what would be your recommendations to the government of Pakistan to restore the balance in the region?
I think those recommendations are probably obvious to everyone, most of all you.
And I'm talking on behalf of my viewers. Some of them would love to hear it from you.
Yes, and one is that put your own house in order. Two is the terrorism that has largely been taken care of through the bold steps taken by General Raheel Sharif. Three is the corruption issue. Four is the insincerity of our leadership. I don't want to dwell further upon it. Right now, our top leadership is in London, and I don't know what their agenda is. So,
but we'll be digressing, so let's...
So, that's what I said. I haven't named names. Now, this CPEC is extremely important, and both for Pakistan and China. It must. Even if those are mountainous terrains through which it has to pass, China has already said that this is our responsibility. And they are going to take this CPEC, all the three routes converging at Mansehra, I don't know, and from there onwards, they are even taking the railways right up to Khunjerab Pass, Chinese border, that is, and then it will be connected with the Chinese railways. Okay. And they are going to make a motorway kind of a thing on this road which already exists. KKH. And they will need to dig many tunnels. I mean, it's a stupendous talk.
It is.
So, but they have given you guarantees. They have told you, and their only condition was that you are not going to float international tenders for it. We are going to do it for you and nobody else.
But that's fair.
That's fair because the kind of relationships that
Indeed,
you have
with China. And we should not take it for granted.
One thing.
30 seconds.
Less than that. Yes, we can depend on Chinese guarantees. It's a great friend, credible friend. It's a great friendship. But as a sovereign country, we cannot delegate our responsibilities, which is to defend our country in all the possible manners and fashions and manifestations. So we got to strengthen our own, muscle, and from there we go ahead with the CPEC. If you don't do that, you'll be,
Indeed,
omitting to do something important.
And it has not been said that we are going to delegate the defense of Pakistan to anyone else.
I use
that
the
is our
word
primary
responsibility. So
Viewers, with that we conclude this discussion. It has been very passionate, very heartening to listen to two experts who talked about India's cold start strategy. They also talked about Pakistan's tactical nuclear weapons, India's tactical nuclear weapons. We also talked about the imbalance of forces which is going to occur because of the very, very thick and broad wish list of India, especially from the United States of America, although it is getting weapons worth billions of dollars from Russia too. So it leaves Pakistan no option to, first of all, mend its own house, make it in order, ensure that we are on the same page, try and talk peace with Pakistan, but peace and terrorism do not go together. At the same time, keep our powder dry. I'd like to thank you, Major General Khalid Naeem.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure listening to you. I'd like to thank you, Advocate Tariq Pirzada.
Thank you.
Viewers, keep watching us. Hope to see you in the next program, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.